This is your Kungfu times spirituality Séance podcast. Welcome to the news, welcome to the news, welcome to the news. Yeah, that's the title because things are getting weird around here. So that's the intro, that's the hook, that's the way to just start things off today, because what we're trying to do is kick things into a new realm. We're trying to kick things into a weird alternate universe in essence space where we're trying to go in the direction of seances. We're trying to have a seance today, and the direction and the focus of the seance that we're trying to perform today so that we're able to kick things off in the right direction from the get-go is Kung Fu times spirituality. Kung Fu times spirituality. So what that intends to entail is trying to take the essence of the physical and the mental and combine them together as one to develop things that are like that, to open up pipelines and wormholes to be able to walk through them, and combine the physical with the mental to be able to develop new portals in space to be able to walk through them in terms of time, and jumping through wormholes to be able to get to places and spaces which you never thought you'd be able to get to just using certain tools of visualization, but also the element of Kung Fu, which has to do with a mindset essence, which has to do with turning the physical realm into like a space where you become like a different element. You become part of the elements. You try to, in essence, kind of like slow down time. You look at different elements and aspects of the physical, universe and space that's around you and circulates, and you study the essence of Kung Fu and the nature of Wing Chun, for example, and look at the way that the slow movements and the positioning of the self, it aligns with a certain person in terms of the essence of engagement, the art of engagement, the essence of like of a situation of confrontation, of a fighting situation. There's an essence of using someone's energy against them. There's an essence of using energy that's happening that has to do with derogatory energy and turning it into positive energy that works in your favor, in essence. So trying to take hold of that energy and reverse that energy and become sort of a vessel for reversal, for being able to embrace, in other words, negative energy and be able to turn that into positive energy like an asset mindset, taking that element and turning it into an asset mindset. In essence, that's spiritual finance at the same time for you. That's combining Kung Fu with spirituality and spiritual finance in essence. So we're getting into spiritual finance with the nature of asset energy and embracing certain negative energies to be able to embrace that and turn it into statistics, turn it into mathematics, turn it into wormholes where you're able to ride that energy and turn it in around and inside out, and turn it around inside out on itself, and be able to ride that energy into a positive zone by just also correcting and adding value and causing value to be added to certain aspects of your network, and developing a network that develops pipelines for new unique elements to travel, so that when you have negative aspects of your old network, that's not exactly performing the most ideal results for the type of relationships that you want to hold and garner in your life, that you're able to turn that around and change the direction of that and put it into new networks, and take what you've learned with old networks and old networking and negative people and negativisms with negative people, and be able to turn that into new relationships and new pipelines of new information, and be able to take notes of relationships that didn't work and negative energy that didn't work with negative people in the past, and be able to change that into new pipelines for new energy, for developing criteria for new people to search for in a spiritual and a mental and a fundamental sense. So you have four core fundamental values to be able to search for elements in people, inside of people, to be able to look for them, not only in deals and deal structure. You can develop deal structure also by looking for people to develop deals with, by developing character traits to be able to align with them on, and developing friendships on the surface, and then developing conceptually deals on the back end of that. So doing deep research in terms of developing assets and asset energy from past relationships that are not necessarily ideal, to develop a criteria for things that are learned from past negative relationships, to be able to turn that around to, in essence, be able to use that energy on top of itself and form new processes for developing new directions, for developing new relationships, which can then lead to deals, which can then lead to aggregate energy, which can then lead to a pipeline of energy, of a network equaling a net worth that can span and spawn the whole nature of the whole entire world, and developing those networks to be able to develop exactly aggregate energy flow, which can, in essence, translate into universal energy, which is not bound by any known measurable science necessarily. So being able to acknowledge negative past relationships necessarily and nitpick that and be able to pick out and pinpoint certain items and aspects that you'd like to improve in future relationships, you could try to develop a criteria and then develop an interview system and an interview process to be able to develop and approach different people in the future, to be able to develop an ability to be able to weed out and weave through different people and actually approach people on the front end to be able to find and use the activity of action on your own front end, as opposed to waiting for things to come to you and waiting for things to walk into your life and waiting for coincidences and such things. Using the essence of action, using the utility of action, using the essence of agency to be able to use your own self as an agent for action and changing your own trajectory from past relationships that are negative, in essence, to be able to change that and weed out negative ones and put up barriers and put up filters to be able to not have that in line, and developing new research for new criteria, for new avenues, for new directions, for new pipelines of new relationships, to be able to develop a positive network that is effervescent in terms of growth potential, conceptualization, to be able to grow on the back end of different growth, on the back end of different growth, on the back end of different growth. So you have a growth network and a growth mindset and people that make you feel like when you first meet them and you first talk to them, like there's a sense of growth emanating from what they're about to say or something of that nature, where you can sort of count on that because it's the nature of the fundamental essence of the energy. That's the undertone. It's the undertone of the nature of the essence of the corresponding origin energy that started the initial relationship to begin with. And that can start with people in your initial realm and your direct physical realm, necessarily by using that certain criteria to develop a process, which then therefore kind of has people that don't qualify necessarily exit the circle and the ring of your qualification. And then at the same time, it allows people to then eventually come after you, to be able to come after you, and then you're interviewing people that are like, as opposed to the other way around, where it's typically always the other way around, where people typically are. That's typically is what I'm getting at, is just when you develop that criteria, then you're always using agency, you're always using action to develop new relationships by interviewing new people on a consistent basis, and using that action so that your time is fully fulfilled to be interviewing people, as opposed to ever having to do it the other way around, where you're waiting for such things and you're trying to be interviewed in other positions necessarily, because you're using the agency of action to develop forward movement and forward motion, and you're also developing deals. That's the pipeline of energy, similar energy, to be able to develop deals of different energy structures and different energy flows, to be able to develop plates of energy, to be able to try to close those deals and develop a buy and a sell. A sell and a buy, a sell on the top of the plate and a buy on the bottom of the plate, so that in essence you're able to then make a logo in the middle of the plate and develop a person that is also possible to ping onto that plate, to be able to be a representative for that plate, and that spinning, consistent, ongoing movement, motion, ocean energy that's in the center of the plate, that has the ability to develop into a deal, form into a deal, because the energy has the ability to spawn into something else based upon a friendship that's foundational and to begin with. And it's also really good and helpful to be able to develop ongoing consistent relationships of this fashion, and therefore use a lot of negativity from the past and derogatory instances to then transition that into in essence positive relationships, and using the essence of agency to fill a full schedule, so it's not a matter in essence of trying to deal with and weed out, but in essence any longer in the future, but also in essence just trying to develop time frames, because time is actually tight, time is short in life, so that you're actually nitpicking and developing a certain aspect and a level of your time, a certain value of your time, a certain money aspect, a certain way to peg a certain value of currency to your time in time, if you're good enough at picking and choosing relationships, so that you're able to fill up and consistently fill up your schedule with relationships and time where there is a money dynamic relationship and monetary energy back and forth dynamic energy relationship, to where you can fill your schedule and increase the value of your schedule as time goes on, based upon a niche being focused on and based upon a professionalism being increased as time and more meetings occur as time passes and such things, but not expecting that, never expecting to charge, but being able to just do things for free, doing things for free with your entrepreneurship mindset on your free time, necessarily to be able to continue to be able to try to enhance your root network, because that equals your net worth. So even if they're just friends, even if they're just acquaintances, that means they're valuable. That is valuable process. That is relationship capital. That is, in essence, something worth visiting. And I'll give a shout out to Garrett Gunderson as well. He has great tax information, is a good source for talking about that as well. But yeah, that's the Séance. of today because we're trying to focus on relationships and something also known as relationship capital. And getting deeper into the essence and the roots of interviewing people so that, in essence, there's not accidents where you accidentally get to spend time with people because they accidentally cross paths with you, but you're actually more intentional about your path, and then develop an action mindset, and then develop a portfolio because, in essence, you have to change the world, you have to change problems. And in essence, if you're sitting around, if you're waiting, it shows the sign of laziness as opposed to going around and using the action and the agency of action to be able to go around the world and try to find problems and actively take action to try to patch the problems with people and the right resources to patch the problems. Put a fishing pole into each pool. Each pool in the world is a pool of demand. It is a pool of demand that has a problem that's attached to it and wants to be solved by a fishing pole that you can throw into the loop. That's also known as a plate. A plate that you can keep spinning with one person that you can find who's qualified to do that. That's how to make money, in essence, on the back end of this activity to begin with. In essence, to continue to make deals around the world, in essence, but to also just have the mindset of continuing to want to continue to solve problems as opposed to looking for money, as opposed to looking for vanity within relationships, as opposed to trying to look cool on social medias and things of this nature, as opposed to any of those things. If you're just convicted about the focus, if you're focused on the focus of trying to solve problems, if the action and the agency within your conscious ability to make conscious choices and take actions is revolving around the essence and the interest to solve problems, it's not just interpersonal relationships, it's taking time to be able to reach out in an interpersonal micro and macro sense. Micro meaning the people that are around you most directly, but macro meaning macro problems that are in other countries around the world necessarily, and using time in a day to connect with other valuable individuals around the world to be able to try to help consolidate and help assist in solving problems around the world, to be able to try to connect with folks in the past, present, and future, to also be able to weed out a lot of the negativity from the past and be able to use that energy, like in Kungfu, back against the problems and such things, and then develop the idea and the essence of actions to be able to just consistently solve problems, to try to have that mindset to consistently solve problems so that there's never a lazy moment, there's never a dull moment, there's never not enough problems in a day to be able to solve around the whole world. So consistently doing research in terms of people and problems and leveraging both of those things to combine the essence and the elements of the Kung Fu mindset, which is the physical body, developing in actions and such things which flow with the right people in the world, and combining that with the mentality of entrepreneurship mentality and philanthropic energy around the whole world, to then develop the mindset to take action, to continue to try to develop the agency to go and solve problems on a consistent basis, fills up the schedule so that negativity is not present and has not the ability to creep in because your schedule is full, in essence, with the right people that are asset mentalities, in essence. And therefore, with the same mindset, and also like a little, this episode is brought to you by the DINKY Tech and Change for Game Studios podcast, which you're actually listening to. Just kidding, it's not a commercial within the commercial. It is a commercial within the commercial, though, because as we'll do that as a little side mission situation, which is a joke, but not a joke, because it is a commercial within the commercial, because we're doing a commercial for the DINKY Tech and Change for Game Studios podcast, because we're talking about now mindset stacking within this seance podcast. This is a seance podcast. We're trying to get into the mentality of a seance, like a seance where we're getting more deep. We want more depth. More depth. So we got to keep digging. And in this instance, we're doing the podcast, the commercial for the podcast, within the podcast, during the podcast, while talking about the DINKY Tech and Change for Game Studios past podcasts as continuous depth building paradigms for mindset stacking, to be able to continue to stack mindsets from listening to this podcast, so that every podcast is like a different paradigm, in essence, so that every podcast is like a wireframe, basically, for the essence of the logo from DINKY Tech and Change for Game Studios, and we're developing a wireframe story, and it's like the story continues every day, in essence, and this podcast is part of it, but it's also like symbolic based on the logos and the nature of every podcast title, which is, in essence, mindset stacking, so that the mindset from each episode is like a different mindset for the day, but also these mindsets can stack, and they're different mindsets that are like a deck of cards, basically. So when you have the whole set and you have the whole deck and it continues to grow, then you just get thicker decks of cards and it gets more dense, and the ability to have interconnections and interweaving items and intercollection connections is similar to the essence and the nature of stacking energy and stacking synapses and stacking mindsets, similar to AI, and how that the whole craziness grows based on exponential unknown, expansion of the whole root network of mentality, energy, and ongoing conceptual capabilities and connectivities and such things. So, we'll see if there's any other conclusions in the meantime. Otherwise, that might be about it for now. That's about it for the seance for now, for tonight. What else did we miss? I think we missed something. We basically want to groove to give your soul a rest. Give your soul a rest within this metaphorical, metaphysical realm. We're resting. We're gonna rest now. That's the end of this one. In the meantime, thanks again. TehC, peace. Bye. Peace.